everyone. May peace be on you all, and welcome to another episode, to the New Year's episode of I'm a Muslim and That's Okay. I'm your host, Shayla, and I am back with this year's very first gift of the gab. And I have with me my first guest. Her name is Aicha Lasfar, and she is from Canada. I forgot, where in Canada are you, Aicha? You have to tell us.
I'm based in Alberta right now.
In Alberta. And I'm sorry, I completely slipped my mind, but you sent me your bio, and you are my people. You are from the arts. I love it. You know, you are an artist, and you do woodworking, watercolor color painting, and just like me, digital illustrations. And apart from that, that's your main thing. That's like your cover. I mean, that's not how I found you. As most people, wasting time on social media, like a terrible amount of time. I'm on TikTok as well. And I came across your videos, Aicha, and I thought that, I was like, first of all, it didn't strike me that you were Muslim, but you were speaking on a Muslim topic, and that's my bad. Okay, that's my I guess inner perception, prejudice, whatever you want to call it. But you were talking about Muslim issues that can be pretty iffy, especially on social media. So, but before I get into that, please give us a proper, what I did was I threw in a couple of fun facts about you, but please tell us a little more about yourself, where you're from, what you do, and how did you end up on TikTok?
Well, first of all, thanks so much, Shahda, for having me on. And also, it's really funny what you said about you didn't assume that I'm Muslim right away, because even though I myself am a Muslim woman who doesn't wear hijab, I still make that same assumption about other unveiled Muslim women, where I'm like, oh, she's Muslim. Oh, I didn't, that's the thing. It's an identifier, and you won't realize, right away necessarily. So it's right. Funny that I literally do that myself. So, but yeah, I'm a creator on TikTok at the moment. Also have, my Instagram account where I post my artwork and try to run my small art business. But I'm currently living in Alberta, but I'm actually originally from the capital region of Canada, so around the Ottawa capital city and stuff like that. And I moved to Alberta about 6 years ago. It's going to be 7 years now soon, which is crazy. So my husband and I moved across the country for work, as many people do. There's this joke in Alberta where we say most people in Alberta are not from Alberta, because it's this economy that, a lot of people from around the country go there for the, there's the oil and gas industry and all that stuff, which my husband is not even a part of. He's a high school teacher, actually. And so we moved out here for his work, and we have 2 young kids. We're about to turn 8 and 10 now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I'm a mom on top of the, the art stuff,
everything
and the
else.
Stuff. So
yeah,
it's a bit of a juggling act here.
I'm sure.
And as for my background, ethnicity wise, my father is from Morocco, and my mother is French Canadian. So I have that mix going on, sort of your typical caught between East and West situation.
Right.
But I realized throughout the years that even if you're not a mixed kid, if you're any kind of ethnic kid living in the West, you always kind of feel a little torn between East and West.
Right.
But the fact that I'm literally half is definitely has been an experience. And so and as for my professional or educational background, if you will, I've always been a bit of an entrepreneur. I just don't really vibe with school. I'm a bit of a college dropout.
Right.
Which is ironic because my husband's an educator. But I never really liked the structure of school, and I dropped out of college and just tried to do things on my own. And so before I had kids, I was trying to run my own videography business.
Oh, wow.
And I put that aside because videography is insanely hard to do when you have young children.
Right.
But I still really had all this creative energy that needed an outlet. I've always been a creative person my whole life. I always had some kind of an outlet. But I was in a position where I was absorbed in the motherhood role, which is great, and it's obviously, I do not want to downplay motherhood in any way. It's an insanely rewarding and, hard thing to do, but I needed that creative outlet. And
Right.
so I started doing art, visual arts, because that's something that can be quietly done in the evenings when the kids are in bed or whatnot. And it started as something just for myself, literally as a sort of a self-therapy. And I was posting it on social media just to kind of show people what I was up to. And very quickly, they started asking me if I was going to sell my work, which was very flattering. And it didn't even cross my mind, but I was like, sure, like who's going to be opposed to some extra pocket money, you know?
Right.
So I started putting a price tag on my artwork, and it just grew from there over the past 4 years or so. Alhamdulillah.
No, I love seeing the work, because again, and before I get into that, for all the people who can't see you, the reason, the one of the reasons is not just that you're not wearing a hijab. Again, like this is not a debate about that. Is because you have that fantastic fade, the fade hairdo, and the septum piercing. Oh my God, like that is so cool. I was like, oh my God, I need that, even though I look terrible with it. But
no,
the thing is,
I don't think so.
That was the striking part about it, because visually, like, nobody would be able to perceive that, because again, we have so many preconceived notions in our brains, whether we'd like to or not. We do have those preconceived notions, and that's what sort of like blocks us from really taking in actual information. So
Absolutely.
that was the surprise, and I was like,
that was the hook for you.
That was the hook for me. That was the hook for me. I was like, I need to know more. What does she do?
No, I'm really flattered by that. I'm really happy with my haircut and my septum, and that's been part of a bit of a personal transformation over the past few years. I didn't always look like this. I actually used to wear hijab for most of my life.
Right.
Even though I always had a bit of that anti-mainstream punk rock attitude, I never felt like I could really express it, because I was afraid to lose the people close to me, you know, because again, with being sort of stretched between East and Western mentality or culture, if you will, you know, everything that's associated with the alternative movement is always very much sadly pinned as that's for white people. You know, like anything alternative, whether it's metal, emo, goth, punk, whatever it is, it's always like, oh, that's like a white people thing. Right. And so I was afraid to lose my ethnic and or Muslim friends if I had dived straight into that culture. Right. I was afraid that I would just alienate myself more from my ethnic background and my ethnic friends and all that stuff. So I kind of just kept it under wraps. No pun intended. And yeah, and it was just later in my life, you know, around your 30s, you know, that they always say that's when you start to be a bit more unapologetic, and you're like, why was I wasting all of those years trying to please other people or living for other people? I'm going to be authentic to myself. And as a Muslim, for me, that authenticity is shared between myself and my creator, right? So the way I operate through life is I try my best to reduce my ego, reduce the thoughts of other people, and to just have it be a thing that's between me and God, you know. And that's kind of how I move forward, and that's, you know, part of how I ended up on doing what I do on TikTok.
And that's the thing. I found you on TikTok. Okay. I love your work, but I found you on TikTok because you were discussing so many things, looking the way you do, that are, you know, generally reserved for, I guess, really, and again, these are all preconceived notions, but they come into spaces that are religiously, like, I guess, conservative, or in spaces that are
very traditional spaces.
Very traditional, even though what you're covering in a lot of them is very controversial stuff, things like spiritual abuse and the whole debate of hijab or not hijab, or even just living the alternative lifestyle as you do. You in one of the videos, I think you had featured yourself, you know, listening to heavy metal goth music and doing housework, and it's like a very non-traditional Muslim way of doing housework. I mean, everybody loves music, but you know, that's not the vision in our heads that's going on. But and that's the thing, you are discussing all of these things looking the way you do. What I want to know is that, first of all, I think what sort of drove you to make this content? Why have these really heavy, controversial discussions at all?
It's interesting because like most people who download TikTok, it was, it takes you in baby steps. First you make an account just to be able to have the algorithm be like catered to you.
Right.
And then, you everybody says how easy it is to get views and stuff on TikTok. So I'm like, okay, I'll try this out. And I put out a few feelers, like videos of just cute things like my pets or like hikes in the woods or whatever. And actually, one of the first videos I ever posted was a cat video, which we all know cat videos are like internet currency. And so my first big block of followers was because one of my cat videos went viral.
Oh, wow.
And so a lot of people don't know that whatever following I have right now is mostly based on like the following I got from that cat video.
Whatever works. If it's the cat, it works.
Exactly. Whatever works. And so, my content kind of evolved from just sharing my art to, I'm trying to remember, when did I make the switch to sort of talking about being an alternative Muslim? I think, okay, yes, I know where it started. It's because I did this sort of showing myself through the years video, and I've deleted it since. I think it was doing very well, but I deleted it because it did come across like I was putting the hijab down. Because essentially I was just trying to show my journey from literally kindergarten to who I am now as a 30-year-old woman. And I started wearing a hijab actually in kindergarten, which for people who don't know is not actually right, because hijab is prescribed for adults. It's not prescribed to children.
Right.
And I started wearing it a lot, like pretty often, way too early in life in kindergarten. And so most of my pictures of my past, actually all of them that I have on my phone, I'm always wearing that hijab.
Right.
So when I did this sort of slideshow showing myself from kindergarten all the way up to now, it came across like a sort of a glow up. It was a glow up, but people really interpreted it as a glow up because I left hijab. You know what I mean?
And I want to ask you, where were these reactions coming from? Was it from Muslim followers or non-Muslim followers?
Oh, it's always the Muslim followers, unfortunately. Yeah. Unfortunately, we're an insanely self-critical community where we kind of feel like when you see another Muslim, it's like you have this weird entitlement to tell them how to live their life and be very sort of judgmental and sort of prying into their personal things. And so there was a lot of very nasty comments, sadly, from other Muslims, being like, you're so ugly now you look like some weird like LGBTQ like lesbian type person. You used to be like so pretty before, which like, by the way, very disgusting thing to refer to someone looking lesbian as like this bad thing, which I'll address that later, but they use it as an insult. And they kind of they're just disparaging, be like, you used to be so pretty, now you look so ugly. And then obviously there's also Islamophobes or ex-Muslims that jumped on it a little bit and were like, oh, good for you that you left the hijab behind. And I was like, no, that's not what I was trying to say either. You know what I mean? Like people were jumping on my journey, and literally I made no statements. It was just a slideshow with music, showing myself from a child all the way up to now with no context. And people, it's really interesting. People projected their context onto it, their own personal biases. So from one extreme, you had very sort of, conservative, judgmental Muslims who said all those nasty things. And on the other extreme, you have the Islamophobes, and they're both, sort of fighting in the comments.
It's basically the same context, but in two separate ways. It is taking your personal journey and putting it out for debate when it's not up for debate. It's literally your life.
Yeah, and I try my best not to reply to, stupid or hateful comments, but I remember
hard. I don't know. Here's the thing. I've been through some of your videos. I'm like, I don't know how she does it, okay? Because I can like see it in my head, all the comments that would go there, and I would not do well, okay? I would not do well with it because I have a short fuse.
It's hard. It's hard. Oh yeah, I have to bite my fingers. You know, usually they say bite your
Right.
tongue, but I have to bite my fingers not to be typing. But it's yeah, it's you know, some of the stupid comments that I got, I replied and said, this seems like a you problem. This seems like you're projecting, because
Right.
I literally didn't say a single thing.
Right.
You know, if you think that I'm saying that this is a glow up because I left hijab, that's literally your interpretation, because I never said that.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so I actually released a video after that explaining and being like, you know, all I wanted to show was the change that I've been through, like where like life took me. I thought it was a really cool sort of experiment just to see me morph. And also I wanted to express how lucky I am to have a family and a community that supports me and doesn't make me feel judged or like will disown me because of my change, right? Because let's be real, that happens for anybody, right? For a lot of people, regardless of their religious, cultural background, whatever, when you make a big change in your life, you put yourself up at risk for your family, your friends, and all that stuff to start treating you differently or even cutting you off, right? And I just wanted to express how important I think it is for people to allow people close to them to change, to be different, to explore themselves, their spirituality, all that kind of stuff, right? So I wanted to express how lucky I was to have that community around me that lets me be. And of course, when I took my hijab off and stuff like that, I did hear a little bit from some family, you know, I had some phone calls and stuff like that, but again, they were so kind and supportive and literally were just like, clearly you're going through a change, and I just want to let you know that I've noticed and I hope everything's okay, kind of thing. You know, there was no judgment and stuff like that. So again, I wanted to express that's how my family dynamic is, and I think that's extremely healthy. And it's a good example for, again, those two extremes. For conservative Muslims, extremely conservative Muslims who would maybe, you know, cut someone off for doing what I did. It's showing them, hey, that's not the right way. When someone in your family starts to be different, you should still be non-judgmental and accept them and love them. And then for the Islamophobes, it's like, hey, by the way, not all Muslims are crazy people who disown their families for, you know, either coming out or again, changing something different about themselves. Like, you know, Muslims can have totally normal family dynamics, you know, because there's this very Islamophobic perception that Muslims are, you know, God forbid, those whole honor killing type of rhetoric that we hear about, you know, which are in context extremely rare, but that's kind of how they picture us as Muslims, is like, if you deviate from the traditional path, we will cut you off, we will potentially kill you, you know, whatever. So it was to kind of show both extremes, like, hey, there's a lot of normal Muslim families out there with like healthy family dynamics who will support each other and not like go to extreme measures, you know what I mean? So I just wanted to share that. And then it kind of snowballed, because the way TikTok works is you can reply by video to people's comments, right? So the comments that were left on those videos, I would reply to some of them with video, and then it kind of snowballs from there. And so my account slowly became about addressing the topic of, you know, judgment in our community, and how, again, the Muslim community tends to be very, very focused on appearances and the appearance of righteousness rather than righteousness itself. You know, not that those two are separate, but you know what I mean? Again, like you were saying, perceptions and all that stuff, like our community is really caught up in perception. And I just wanted to address that and start breaking that down a little bit.
And that's the thing. We have a very, I guess, tunnel vision when it comes to appearing righteous as well. And again, it's not just a Muslim community sort of thing. People in general have a thing that you can only look righteous in a certain way. You have to be clean cut, or you have to conform to certain kinds of things you wear and what you do, that sort of thing. So and that's the thing in life, you know, that's not how it works. I've known a lot of people who mohawks, tattooed, you know, they're not like from the like normal, I guess, and if you call it from any other way, like they're from the alternative lifestyle, but good, decent people at the same time. So it's a overall problem that we have very narrow perceptions of what it is, and who is actually a good person. Like person wearing a hijab like me might not be like all that they're cracked up to be, or anybody like person who's suit and tie might not be the best kind of person, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And you sort of address that in some of your videos about, especially, and this was, I think, this one got you the most flack, the one about spiritual abuse, in which you spoke specifically about a Muslim cleric. But again, this is not just about a particular Muslim cleric. In religious communities as a whole, this is a problem, that those who are in positions of power have a tendency to abuse power in any faiths, that sort of thing. So tell me about that. How did that come into being? Because that I could, like you said, you replied to so many comments from just that video itself that it's like sort of snowballed into something really big.
So that whole, and I've since done quite a bit, a few videos about spiritual abuse since that first one, but essentially, and yeah, before I get started, I just want to underline exactly what you said, that spiritual abuse is a worldwide cross-religious problem. Like, it's very important for me to clarify that. Like, I'm Muslim, so I'm going to talk about Muslim issues,
right?
But every single religious community has this issue, and also non-religious community. Again, like you said, with great power comes great responsibility.
Yes.
And people will misuse that power and be attracted to those positions of power just to be able to abuse other people, right? So that's the thing, is that Muslims are not immune to this. And I think growing up in a Muslim community, we're often fed this sort of very vanilla Islam, or sort of whitewashed, I guess, in a way, where it's
very naive sort of perception,
very naive
about
of like
our communities.
Yeah, and that we are different than everyone else. It's like, oh, Muslims, like, unfortunately, this is, I've been to Islamic school. Like, a lot of people don't know, I actually am an Islamic school alumni. I used to go to private Islamic school as a kid. And so a lot of the rhetoric there was like, Muslims are very morally superior. Like, we just know better and do better than everyone.
Right.
And of course, they'll say, like, of course, some Muslims can be bad, but generally, we are a superior community in terms of morality and belief and all that stuff. Which, again, I think every religious community kind of says that about themselves. It's not unique to Muslims. And so you kind of grow up with this mentality of like, you always hear about, for example, the abuses in the Catholic Church, right? Like, that's always hitting the news, the priests and other people in positions of power in the church who abuse their power. And you kind of categorize that as, oh, that's a Christian issue.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that happens. It's because those crazy priests, they're all celibate, so they just kind of go crazy. And, you make up these kind of weird excuses that for some reason it only happens within the Christian context, and you don't even think to stop.
To us, sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. You don't stop to think that, oh, this is not just the priests. It's like, it's everywhere, and you just don't want to think that your community or the people that you look up to could be capable of stuff like that. And so it's just, like, relatively recently in my life that it starts to dawn on me just how much it's also an issue in the Muslim community. And so over the past few years, there's quite a few notable Muslim preachers here in the West who have been exposed for abusing their power. And that had quite a heavy impact on me, because again, it's one thing to know something sort of subconsciously, but when you really see it, when you're like, oh, like, this is an issue, it hits you on a different level, especially when it hits close to home, because some of those preachers I really looked up to personally. Some of them I met in real life, at meet and greets or whatever. I attended their lectures, I got to talk to them. And so to know later that whole time that they were engaged in very harmful behavior was, it hit really close to home. And so I've been digesting that over the years, but there's this one cleric in particular. He's not even a cleric, actually. He's just sort of a very well-spoken preacher person, a sort of a internet celebrity type of preacher. And he was exposed for inappropriate behavior, and he never even sort of, he never took the appropriate steps afterwards. He never stepped down. He never acknowledged the harm that he did. He just sort of deflected it and kept going as if nothing had happened. And it just broke my heart that the community would incessantly like defend this man despite what he's done.
But here's the thing,
You know?
Aisha. That's where the problem lies. And again, this is not just
Exactly.
about Muslim preachers or any religious preachers. The reason why people keep going is that other people allow them to keep going.
Exactly. That's what hit me later. And I literally did a video on this on TikTok later on. I said, it hits me all of a sudden. And again, sometimes it's funny how things are so obvious, but it just doesn't compute until your brain literally goes through the steps. And so I was like, wait a minute, this whole time, like Christians who were leaving the church in droves, it wasn't because they were like, oh, like the priests are disgusting. It was like, no, like crime and corruption happens all the time. Like that's part of human nature. What's not like supposed to be part of human nature, or that's not okay, is people who know about the monsters and protect them. That's like it's the cover up. It's the cover up that messes everything up. Because we can quote unquote not forgive, but like we can overlook an abuser once they're rooted, like picked out, right? If we expose someone for being abusive and we pick them out and we throw them out of the community, then everything's all right again. But that's not how it works. They're still in there. They're still infecting the community, and they've got like this, you know, the cell of people around them sort of protecting them. So that's what's really tragic. And so again, what started this whole thing on TikTok is because I saw a woman make a whole video. Like it was one of those things like, oh, what's a controversial opinion that you have? And they were like, well, my controversial opinion is that we've canceled this man for no good reason. He's, you know, completely, he's a good preacher. He helps so many people. And we as a community are so quick to judge. And that was really funny to me because I'm like, I see it as the complete opposite. Like this man was not canceled enough. Like he's still out there doing stuff. What do you mean he's canceled? Like maybe a few people canceled him, but generally he's doing very well. Like most people still listen to him. Actually, a lot of people have no idea about his past. I had a bunch of comments on my video being like, what did he do? What? Like I never heard, what is this? Like it was all brand new to them. Whereas this happened about like 4 years ago.
It's not very long ago, it's true.
Yeah, it was, well, I mean, it's long in internet years, you know, it was 4 years.
We have short-term memory issues.
Yeah. Yeah, like it was like 4 years that he was exposed for this, and still a lot of people on the internet don't know. And so I couldn't help it. I had to respond. I was just like, and then whenever I respond to people on TikTok, I try to make it very clear I'm not attacking you as a person. Like we're actually mutuals, me and this woman who made the video, like we're actually friends and stuff on TikTok. But I was like, I have to call out this idea, not you. I'm not targeting you. It's just you put forward this idea that this man is, you know, that we should forgive him, that he's innocent or whatever it is. I'm like, I need to like put a stopper on this, because I just see it as so damaging. And he's been having this resurgence where like I'm scrolling on TikTok and I see his face, like Islamic accounts are posting his speeches.
Content.
And it's very triggering for some people. Even I'm not even one of his direct victims or anything like that, but it's triggering to me when I scroll and I see him talking. I'm like, ugh, this guy is like still around, you know? And so I was like, okay, let's address this. And yeah, you know, it started a really interesting discussion of people who got it and people who didn't. You know, there's people
that's the thing. I don't know how you handle all of this because it can be pretty crazy. So how do you keep everything like in a space of zen, I guess?
Metal music helps a lot. Just putting in the earphones. To be honest, like that's a lot of people hate on metal music, and I'm like, I for a long time didn't get it either, but when I got it, and I was like, it's very therapeutic. It's actually very therapeutic to let someone else do that screaming for you. That's the way I see it. I'm like, I can't scream that gutturally, like it'll damage my vocal cords, and I can't do that. So I'm like, yes, that's how I feel inside. It's, you know, and a lot of metalheads are actually very, very mellow people because of that. There's this misconception. A lot of people see metalheads as aggressive. They might be aggressive in the mosh pit, but in real life, they tend to be very mellow people because it's like they've released that bad energy, you know? But anyway, I digress. The comments and stuff, honestly, in the beginning, it didn't get me as much, but now as time goes on, it is getting to me a little bit, I have to admit. it's really hard again to bite my fingers or bite my tongue and not to respond, because it's extremely demoralizing to, and you know, I kind of pride myself on explaining things well. I take my time to go point by point and articulate myself to try to make my point as clear as possible. And I really made the effort, and I made I think it was a 2 or 3 part series, and I really put in the effort to like explain why this is so harmful and why we need to act on this and stuff like that. And then still people comment as if they didn't watch the video at all. You know, they like completely missed the point. And that's what I tell myself. Yeah. I'm like, I think they just didn't watch the video. Let's just leave it at that, you know?
You have better perceptions of them than I would, Aicha. That's the thing. At this point, it's hard. You can't really fix everybody or everything, okay? Horse to water sort of situation. Can't make them drink it.
Exactly. No, but you know what it is? Actually, I'm a big sucker for analogies, and it's like, okay, you'll bring the horse to the water and they might not drink right away. Right. But if you leave them there and you walk away, they might eventually take a sip.
I hope so.
You know, that's kind of how I see it, is like, okay, because I know that that's how my brain works. Over the years, sometimes I've heard an argument and right away I was like, no, that doesn't make any sense. That's stupid. And then years or months or whatever later, like I found myself agreeing with a statement that I heavily disagreed with before. Right. You know, so I'm hoping for the growth of some people that maybe right now it's hitting them the wrong way, but a little time down the line, they're going to be like, oh, I get it, you know? Right. That's the hope. So I'm like, by me being mean or disrespectful to them, it's only going to delay that process. Right. You know, it's going to make them more resistant to the idea. Right. If you combat them and with bad manners or put them down, and I'm not perfect. There's times definitely where I lost my patience and you know, I've maybe replied in ways that were less graceful than I'd like. But generally I try to keep it as mild as I can in the comments, because I'm like, okay, they're being very dense now. Right. But I hope that, you know, some way down the line they'll soften up a bit, and me being mean is not going to help with that softening process. It's just going to make them more hard, you know? So that's kind of how I try to approach it. But it's definitely a challenge.
I can completely like see how it, because that's the thing. When it comes to faith, any faith or any belief system per se, you have a lot of people that are so vehement in their opinions about so many things. Like religious leaders is one of them. Hijab is the other one. For us, for Muslims, hijab is one of those things that really, you know, it could start like an entire forest fire on its own. That's how we feel about it. So when you have such polarized opinions that sort of come out in the comment section, it does become hard. Now, but how do you see yourself going forward with this, with how you're doing your TikTok videos, and what do you hope to, I don't know, achieve through it? Like, what would be the ideal outcome of you doing your TikTok videos?
Well, I'm so glad you're asking that, actually, because it's been on my mind because of everything we just discussed. I'm like, this is very heavy emotionally. And I'm the kind of person where it doesn't hit me right away. In the beginning, I was like, I can do this. I can like take them on or whatever. But as time goes on, I'm like, my heart feels heavy. I'm like, oh my God, like the amount of people who are defending these abusers or choosing to look the other way or downplay the severity of the abuse. Or the amount of people that are so judgmental. And again, going back to the whole obsession with the appearance of righteousness, there's a lot of actually it happened a few times that people comment and they're like, just by looking at you, I thought you were like this really weird, like liberal Muslim, but after listening to you, I realized like you're kind of okay. It really makes me laugh, because I'm like, you went on a whole journey there, didn't you? Like, oh, it's so funny. But I love, my whole life I've always loved breaking subverting expectations of people. Like, oh, you think this is one way? No, actually it's like this, or you know, or whatever. So, you know, part of me looking the way that I do, there's many, I'm not going to get into it, there's many personal intentions and journey and all that stuff behind it. But one of the sort of advantages, if you will, is that it attracts people to talk about these topics because they're like, oh, well, this person's definitely not judgmental because, like, look at her. You know? And there was another video that kind of went off a little bit recently where I'm kind of teasing, because there's Muslims that are starting to celebrate Christmas more and more and putting up trees in their homes. Right. And I was never someone to do that. So I thought it'd be really funny if I acted judgmental towards people that do that, because look at me, who am I to be judgmental? So that was the whole joke. I was like, oh, you put Christmas trees up in your house? Okay. People did not get the joke in the comments. They're like, literally, who are you to judge? Didn't you know your haircut is haram? Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah, that's the joke. Anyway, so so where I want to go forward with the TikToks is just sort of, you know, kind of take a step back a little bit, actually, because like I said, it's getting quite heavy, especially with the topic of spiritual abuse, because that is, again, very, very demoralizing when you realize
it opens a whole lot of floodgates, Aicha. I mean, here's the thing. Yeah. You're on the opposite side of an entire, I don't know, industry. I don't even know what to call it. It's a movement. It's like a whole thing with a lot of followers and almost cultish. Definitely cultish. Yeah. So
because the fervor with which they defend them, it's definitely as if they're a cult leader. That's what it feels like.
Right.
You know.
So it puts you in, and that's the thing. I mean, with how you appear and the opinions you express, it would definitely put you on the receiving end. That's the thing. Let's say if I was giving that opinion, let's pretend if I was brave enough to do that, they would have a filter just because I got the hijab on. But for you, the filter, all bets are off, and they're like bearing their claws and teeth for you. That's the problem.
Yeah, but you know, that's the whole thing for me, and that's a big sort of, you know, you asked me before, like, how do I get through it and stuff like that, because for me, good character is the basis of our religion.
Right.
And I always like to respond to people and say, you know, as Muslims, we start everything in life, like literally from eating to getting dressed, to waking up in the morning, to how we start our prayers. Everything starts with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Right. Which means in the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful.
Right.
Why did God choose those two qualities out of all of his qualities? Because in Islam, we believe God has 99 qualities at least. Right. And so he chose those two. You know, he didn't say in the name of God, the most
powerful
or wrathful
the one who has power over everything or who has knowledge over everything. It was always Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, most gracious, most merciful. Mercy.
That's right. And also, you know, if we look at the life of our prophet, peace be upon him, who was the one who modeled the religion for us, he approached everything with grace and mercy.
Right.
You know, grace and mercy, grace and mercy. That's always how we should be approaching people. And that's like the basis of good character. Because if you have mercy, you're going to expect the best from them, assume the best from them. And if you have grace, you handle things gracefully. Right. So literally, mercy and grace, it's good character is the basis of everything we should be doing as Muslims. It's literally the foundation of our faith, one of the foundations. And so when fellow Muslims come to me with all of this aggression, bad manners, bad words, even if there could be a nugget of truth to what they're saying, I'm like, all that is invalidated because you literally have not grasped the basis of our faith.
That's right.
You have not a good grasp on literally the foundation of our faith, which is grace and mercy. And so I just feel sorry for them because like pity honestly is a big way that I get through this. I'm like, I just feel sorry for them because they're really caught up in the wrong parts, not the wrong parts of our religion, because there are no wrong parts to our religion, but you know what I mean? Like
they're dying over the wrong hill. Let's put it this way.
They have the emphasis on the wrong priorities, if you will. Where, for example, the fact that I don't wear hijab is so triggering to them.
Yeah.
But good character isn't. Like, you will literally berate someone for not wearing a hijab, but don't you see? Like, they'll even use swear words and cuss words. I'm like, you're literally sinning and telling me not to sin. Like, it just, there's no logical or critical thinking happening. And so I just feel sorry for them. And again, my main thing is to remind people to be righteous, to actually be righteous, and not be so focused on the appearance of righteousness. And it's not that I want to downplay things like hijab or having a full beard or anything like that. Those things are part of our faith and they're important. And I never, I'll always defend hijab. That's another thing. People assume that because a lot of Muslim women who take hijab off tend to sort of downplay it a lot and be like, oh, it's just cultural anyway, or it was never even part of Islam anyway. But I'm like, no, like I believe in hijab. I believe it has its place in our tradition. I'm not downplaying it. I'm just saying y'all have upplayed it way too much, in comparison to all the other aspects of our faith. And so, yeah, just feeling sorry for them honestly really helps a lot. And I'm like, inshallah, may Allah guide them, literally, which is funny because they're thinking the same thing about me. And but seriously, people will comment that, they'll be like, may God help you, or may God like have mercy on you, or things like that. And I reply to them like, Ameen, and you too, like, literally, like, may God help us all. And we're
help
just
us all.
We're on different radio wavelengths sometimes, but that's the main thing. We all just hope for God's grace and mercy.
Right.
And I'm totally forgetting the last question you asked me. Was it moving forward with the TikTok?
Yeah.
Where do I want to take it?
Like, that's the thing. Right now, this is at the core of what you create your content about. Like, these are topics that have always been flashpoints in the Muslim community: hijab, spiritual leaders, and in general, how judgmental it can be in religious settings about, oh, but I'm right, you're wrong, sort of thing. The other thing I wanted to ask you about, and again, this is not just a Muslim thing, I think there is a general mistrust of faith that is prevalent because, again, about how a lot of abuse occurs, like, or any form of authority. It had said on your profile that you are unmosqued. If you would want to explain, like, what does that mean for you and why that came about?
So yeah, I'm someone who just unfortunately have a lot of negative emotional associations to traditional Islamic spaces.
Right.
So unmosqued doesn't mean just the mosque. It's just like sort of any mainstream traditional religious space.
Right.
I just feel like a sore thumb, and that I won't be accepted or treated normally if I step into that space. Right. And so here in North America, at least, the mosque culture is a certain type of way where I think it's starting to change now, hopefully in some places, but mosques tend to be sort of they operate a little bit like a country club, where you have the regulars who are all, again, in their suit and tie, if you will, they're wearing that proper uniform.
Right.
And they're always there and they socialize there. And so when you walk in not looking the part, or not maybe behaving the part, you're really like looked, with that side glance, and you experience a bit of that judgment. It very much feels like walking into a country club. Right. Which is really sad, because mosques are supposed to be places to help people. It's not for people that have already been helped. It's for people that need the help, who want that spiritual connection. But you walk in there, and I don't know, for me, generally it tends to be kind of a negative emotional experience. I'm just like, like, I literally dread going into the masjid. Like, unfortunately, it's really hard for me to separate the people and the vibe from connecting to Allah. Like, I'm someone who really relies heavily on vibes and aesthetic. I guess that's that artistic part of me. Like, when I walk into a space, I need to feel like that the whole vibe is just a good vibe, and I have walked into some mosques who did have impeccable vibes. But most of the time, sadly, they don't for me. And moving out here in Alberta, which is very, very well known for its amazing landscapes. We have the Banff National Park with Lake Louise, like, it's world known, beautiful natural sites. And going up there, I like to say that's where I feel the most Canadian and the most Muslim all at once. It's where I feel the most spiritually connected. That's where I feel, the creator Allah the most. And that's where I feel my spiritual connection. So I like to say, the mountain is my mosque, the mountain is my temple. That's where I kind of go to really, recharge spiritually, and to connect to Allah is always out in nature. Right. And I think that's okay. I think that's one great thing about Islam, is that it does encourage community, and it does encourage you to go to the mosque and to meet with other Muslims. And
Right.
for Muslim men, it's actually an obligation. They have to go
Right.
to the mosque once a week.
Right.
But it also acknowledges that there's some people that are more private, or that
Right.
prefer to worship alone or whatever. And so you can worship alone. There's no stigma or taboo or discouragement from just praying on your own,
Right.
you know? And so I think that helps a lot of people to be like, well, maybe the community doesn't get me, but I can still have that one-on-one connection with God anytime that I want.
Right.
And so I wanted to reach out to other Muslims who feel like me too, that they don't feel very comfortable in traditional places, that they
Right.
don't fit into that country club, you know? And we're all just kind of waiting outside the country club.
That's
like,
what I
well,
wanted to ask. Like, through your TikTok, have you found other like alternative Muslims?
100%.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. That's one big thing that keeps me going, again, because of all the negativity that I get. I also have a lot of positivity, and that's what keeps me going as well. Right. Is knowing that for every ignorant comment I get, there's also an amazing person that says something really nice, or that my content resonates with them. Right. And I've even had, you know, I'm not saying this to sort of pat myself on the shoulder or whatever, but I've had people message me privately being like, hey, like I was about to like fall out completely. You know, I just felt like there was absolutely no space for me in this community, that I'm just like this weirdo, and maybe Islam is not for me. Right. You know, maybe I shouldn't be Muslim then, because I literally cannot reconcile who I am with my faith, which is extremely tragic. And I think people who are insanely judgmental, like, don't see how much damage they're causing to people like that. But they'll reach out to me and be like, you know, finding your content made me feel less alone, and that I can be fully unapologetically Muslim while also like being myself, and it's a journey, and I don't have to like have that country club perfect aesthetic to be Muslim. So that's what keeps me going. I'm like, wow, okay, that's actually reaching people who need it. And I've shifted my focus to reach out to those people versus trying to convince the other kind of people, because I think that's how I started out a little bit. I was like trying to convince people who thought differently than me, you know, because I'm always like, oh, I don't want to build an echo chamber. You know, that's a big problem with the internet, is we're building these echo chambers around ourselves, only surrounding ourselves with people who agree with us. But now I'm kind of like unapologetic about it. I'm like, yep, I'm building that echo chamber, and you know, people who disagree can watch from the outside and learn something. But this space is for people like me, people who are unmasked, people who feel like they don't fit into that traditional space. Because the way I picture it in my mind is that there's a mosque, and it's not a great mosque. Again, it's ones that we find often in our cities that are hard to kind of vibe with. And there's the people outside the mosque who went in and were like, I'm not feeling this, and who stepped back out, and they're just kind of standing there like, I don't know what to do. Right. And I'm here like being like, hey, we could start our own like cool kids club, you know, like come over here. So, you know, we have this we're starting to build a little bit of a community of Muslims who are not very mainstream, but Islam is still very important to them. Right. You know? Right.
No, I fully see that, and I completely appreciate what you do, because it's so needed. There was a time when an alternative, I guess, existence only meant that you could not be Muslim. I'm from that generation, unfortunately, where you had to either fit into the mold or you just couldn't reconcile being Muslim. But I'm like, that's what I appreciate about the content you make, is that you are unapologetically you, but also unapologetically Muslim at the same time. And I think that's so fantastic, Aicha. And you know, I want everybody else to know where they can find you on TikTok for your videos, and on Instagram and your website for your artwork, which is also great. That's the other thing. I mean, the artwork you make is not the traditional Muslim artwork. It's so I love it. Like, I love the stuff you make. So please let my audience know where they can find you.
Thank you. So my whole what's it called, brand is centered around the word Muslim. So moose, like the animal, and then Lim, because again, I'm very Canadian and I'm very Muslim, and I wanted a word that, you know, mashes those two things together. So, you know, moose are very much associated with Canadiana, if you will. Right. So if you just type Muslim in Google, you'll probably find me. But on TikTok, it's Canadian.Muslim. And on Instagram, it's Muslim.works. And my website is muslimworks.ca.
Okay.
And I'm glad you recognize that about my artwork, because that is another part of it, is that I'm trying to make non-traditional artwork. It's my tagline on TikTok is art for the unmasked. So it's very, again, based on the actual like righteousness of our religion, the lessons that we get from it. But meshing that with an art style that you don't usually see, associated with Islamic art and stuff like that. So yeah, you can find all that on Instagram and on my website.
Thank you so much, Aicha. Thank you for being with me and having this discussion. I mean, I've been wanting to have you on ever since I saw you on TikTok. Thank you so much for being my guest. And thank you to everybody who's listened and who's tuned into YouTube to see you. Until next time, y'all take care of yourself and may peace be on you all.